Chapter 3. The Blueprint of Disappearance. Disappearing is not an act of desperation. It is an act of design. People imagine vanishing as a frantic escape, a panicked flight into the unknown. They are wrong. A disappearance is a construction, a deliberate architecture of absence, a sequence of choices that, when assembled correctly, create the illusion of a woman who has slipped through the cracks of her own life. I did not intend to die. I intended to become unfindable. The distinction is important. The morning after I hid the bag behind the false panel in my wardrobe, I sat in my study and began drafting the blueprint. Not on paper, that could be found. Not on my laptop, that could be traced. I drafted it in my mind, committing each step to memory with the precision of a surgeon preparing for an operation. Phase 2. Construct the illusion. A disappearance requires 3 components: a believable emotional decline, a final sighting that appears ordinary, a gap, a moment where the world loses track of you. The first component was already in motion. The second would require timing. The third would require precision. I began with the emotional decline. I visited my GP that afternoon. I told him I had been feeling overwhelmed. Not depressed, that would be too dramatic. Not anxious, that would be too common. Overwhelmed was vague enough to be concerning, but not alarming. He asked questions. I answered them with the calm detachment of someone who had rehearsed the script. He suggested mindfulness exercises. I nodded. He suggested taking time off work. I nodded again. He suggested speaking to a therapist. I agreed. Agreement is a powerful tool. It disarms suspicion. Before leaving, I asked him to note our conversation in my file. He did. Doctors always document. Their documentation would later become evidence. Useful evidence. Next, I visited a solicitor. I told her I was considering a separation. I asked about financial protections. I asked about asset division. I asked about the legal implications of marital misconduct. She took notes. She asked questions. She offered advice. I thanked her and left. I did not sign anything. I did not commit to anything. I simply created a record, a time-stamped consultation that would later suggest I had been preparing to leave Alistair. Another breadcrumb. When I returned home, Alistair was in the sitting room, reading emails on his tablet. He looked up when I entered, his expression softening into the smile he reserved for moments when he remembered he was supposed to care. "How was your day?" he asked. "Fine," I said. He nodded, satisfied with the brevity. He did not ask for details. He never asked for details unless they affected him directly. That was his 4th mistake. Over the next week, I constructed the illusion piece by piece. I withdrew small amounts of cash from different ATMs across London, not enough to raise suspicion, but enough to suggest planning. I purchased train tickets I never intended to use. I visited locations I had no reason to visit: a hotel lobby in Mayfair, a cafe in Camden, a bookshop in Shoreditch, ensuring I appeared on CCTV in each place. A woman preparing to leave her life leaves traces. I left the right ones. I also began altering my routine. Subtle changes: eating less, sleeping less, spending more time alone. Alistair noticed, but only in the way one notices a change in weather, briefly, without concern. "Are you sure you're all right?" he asked one evening. "Yes," I said. "You seem off." "I'm fine." He accepted the answer. He always accepted the answers that required the least effort. The final sighting required more planning. I chose a Thursday. Thursdays are forgettable. Not the beginning of the week, not the end. A day that blends into the background, a day that would not stand out in memory. I told Alistair I was meeting a friend for dinner. He nodded, barely looking up from his laptop. He did not ask which friend. He did not ask where. He did not ask when I would return. His indifference was a gift. I left the house at 6. I walked to the tube station. I made sure to pass the CCTV camera at the entrance. I boarded a train. I got off at the next stop. I boarded another train going in the opposite direction. I exited at a different station entirely. I walked to a restaurant in Soho, entered through the front door, and left through the back. Another camera, another timestamp. Then I walked to the Thames. The river was calm that night, the water reflecting the lights of the city in long, trembling lines. People strolled along the embankment, laughing, talking, living their lives with the careless ease of those who believe tomorrow is guaranteed. I stood by the railing for several minutes, looking out at the water. I made sure to be seen. I made sure to be noticed. I made sure to appear contemplative. A woman standing alone by the river at night is a woman who could be troubled, a woman who could be planning something, a woman who could disappear. I left the embankment at precisely 8:47 p.m. I walked down a side street, turned a corner, and stepped into the shadow between two buildings. That was the moment the world lost track of me. I did not go home. I did not go to a hotel. I did not go to a friend's house. I went to the safe flat, the one Marcus had secured for me months earlier, long before I had fully articulated the plan. Marcus opened the door before I knocked. "You're early," he said. "I'm on schedule," I replied. He stepped aside, letting me in. The flat was small, sparsely furnished, anonymous, a place without history, a place without identity, a place where a woman could cease to exist. "Did he notice anything?" Marcus asked. "Nud." He handed me a burner phone. I turned it on, checked the signal, then turned it off again. "Tomorrow," I said. He nodded. The next morning, I sent the message. Not from my phone, that would be too obvious. From a public computer in a library in a part of London I had never visited before. A message to Alistair, short, ambiguous. "I need time. Please don't call me." I logged out. I wiped the keyboard. I left the library. By the time Alistair received the message, I was already gone, not dead, not harmed, just gone. A woman who disappears voluntarily leaves behind a question. A woman who disappears strategically leaves behind a suspect. And Alistair was about to become the prime one.